Okay, so this is it. A real edible cricket. And I guess this is sort of the way of the future. Hey Joe, how's it going?
Hi Andrew, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So I mean, for years, you have essentially been my go-to for everything planet related. So,
I like that. My name is Johanna Wagstaffe. I'm a meteorologist and an earth scientist. Every day, I see the effects of climate change through my work.
You've probably heard something somewhere about the fact that trees can communicate. And you've probably also heard that global warming is messing everything up.
Yeah, it's really good.
Should I try some?
Try it, yeah. It's really nice.
It takes a single drop of water about 1,000 years to travel around the world. We also know global warming is changing everything.
And so we figured, you know, as we're doing this kind of like look ahead here on About That to 2023 and climate related stories that we should be focused on, we figured it would be a good time to do like almost like an annual checkup on the health of the planet, as it were.
I think that's a great idea.
Pakistan calls it a climate-induced humanitarian crisis of epic proportions as over 30 million people are affected by unprecedented flooding in the country.
119 killed overnight Saturday alone, pushing the toll to more than 1,000 dead.
Pakistan's climate change minister says 1/3 of the country is submerged under flood waters. Early estimates put the damage at more than $10 billion, and government officials say it might take 5 years to rebuild the nation and overcome food shortages.
I have never seen climate carnage on this scale.
And so, Joe, you know, let me just pick up on those words, climate carnage. Like, can we start here? To what extent can we link climate change with the flooding in Pakistan?
Yeah, Andrew, there is a direct link. You know, we know that Pakistan does get annual monsoon flooding. We also know that infrastructure and underlying vulnerabilities are part of the causes, but we also have these new rapid attribution studies. So climate scientists are now able to take an event like those floods and basically run this scenario without the warming that we've seen around the world since the Industrial Revolution. So we are able to say that in Pakistan, those 5-day rainfall totals were 75% more intense because of climate change. So to put a number on it like that, I think really shows that there is a direct link with global warming. We're still trying to understand those trickle-down effects from this one event, but 33 million people were affected, 1.7 million homes destroyed, thousands of people were killed, and it's going to take years, if not decades, to recover from this.
What are the learnings then?
Yeah, I think this was really the first time that so much of the world witnessed a climate-infused, extreme disaster like this, and really saw that it was happening to a part of the world that contributed so little when it comes to global greenhouse gas emissions. And so I think that, stark in-your-face loss and damage, which was such a big topic this year, that the countries that are contributing the least to global warming are getting hit the hardest.
There are growing calls for rich nations to compensate poor nations for the damages they've suffered as a result of climate change.
A global fund to compensate poorer countries suffering climate disasters.
COP27 delivered an historic outcome on the Loss and Damage Fund.
The deadly impacts of climate change are here and now. Loss and damage can no longer be swept under the rug.
I think that took front and center globally, and that really made people see why loss and damage is such an important aspect to the climate change solution globally. But we're going to see it again, and I think we're going to see this layering of human and humanitarian crises and climate change disasters sort of amplify what's happening around the world.
Every year, 11 million tons of plastic waste end up in the oceans, threatening wildlife and littering beaches. Now, the UN Environment Assembly is stepping up.
I see no objections. It is so decided.
To create a resolution aimed at ending plastic pollution.
Now the hard work begins. An intergovernmental committee will meet to nut out the details.
Delegates from around the world are meeting in Uruguay.
Representatives from 150 nations are meeting with the goal of dramatically reducing or eliminating all plastic pollution by 2040.
Okay, so Joe, the plastic problem, it's funny, right? Because when I think of climate change and emissions, many decades ago, like once upon a time, it almost had this like a visibility problem, right? Where it was hard for the everyman to kind of see it as something tangible that was affecting them. And then fast forward to today, it's plain as day. Plastics, it seems like, has the opposite problem in the sense that like it's visible everywhere. It's in everything we have and do and own, but it's not always clear to me, okay, so what does having too much plastic in the world actually do? How does that affect me besides like I'm a bad person for using a plastic straw? Like you know what I'm saying?
I totally know what you're saying. I think about this all the time. I think about the numbers and the fact that, it's not just the impact to marine life, which is huge, and the fact that ultimately the big problem is that plastic, it will continue to break down, but it will never disappear. It just gets smaller and smaller, going through the food chain, ending back up in humans. But the other problem is that to produce plastic, it uses primarily fossil fuels. In fact, about 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions is a result of creating plastic. So plastic and greenhouse gas emissions and global warming really do go hand in hand.
And so tell me more about this sort of recent, meaningful, substantive movement on the world's part in tackling this global plastics problem.
Yeah, I think that it is important, and I think that it is real, and the fact that we now have the beginning of a framework for this global plastics treaty is a huge deal.
It's been described by the UN as the most significant Green Deal since the Paris Climate Accord.
If negotiations go well, the legally binding plastics treaty should be finalised by the end of 2024.
I think sometimes, when we're talking about big UN or global meetings, it's sort of hard to sift through the jargon and see that this will make real impact. But I feel really positive about this one. First of all, the deadline to create this framework that all countries will sign on to is 2024, 1 year. And normally these things take, 5, 6, 7 years. So this is an accelerated global agreement. Countries want to make this happen. And it will come down to individual solutions for countries to reduce the production of plastic, and then where we put that plastic, where it ends up around the world, and figuring out that system. So this is a big problem, but we've taken a big step to try and address it.
Okay, Joe, we got to take a little commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about these little guys. I don't know if you can see that.
That's a cricket.
That's a cricket. Yeah, we'll be back in a moment.
I'll be here for that. Like a whale. For these purposes, I'd like to be a humpback whale. I'm going to eat a giant carbon stuffed fish. It's good carbon. Now, if any one of us dies, the carbon in our bodies will float down to the ocean floor. That's called marine snow. And it gets buried under the ocean dirt, where that carbon remains trapped for millions of years.
Okay, hey, welcome back to About That. I am indeed with meteorologist and my friend Johanna Wagstaffe right now, joining us from beautiful British Columbia. And Joe, we're going to be talking about food.
There are about 15 million crickets in this room. Here, they'll live out their lives freely until they're transformed into food. Though you may be thinking this is a strange choice for food, crickets actually contain more protein than beef without any of the environmental damage.
Imagine a future where we're all eating insects. In the fight against food waste, it might be closer than you think. These black fly larvae might not look that appetizing, but they yield a high-quality protein.
I think within the next 10 to 20 years we'll be consuming insects a lot more, but not necessarily in the form that we see here, but in the form of pasta, such as insect flour and things like that. I think that's how they're going to be in our diet.
Okay, Joe, so here's the thing. I've got this very oily cricket in front of me, and we thought that I should I should try this. I should eat it as a way of demonstrating. Well, I actually don't even know what that demonstrates. I think we just thought it'd be fun to do. But here's the thing. So as you know, and as my producer knows, I have a shellfish allergy. And what we learned is that crickets, I guess, are somewhat part of that same family, and that people who have a shellfish allergy also often have a cricket allergy. So I can't actually eat this. But my very brave producer is going to eat this for us. Hey, Julie.
Hello.
How's it going?
Doing well, thanks.
So,
Julie, hero.
Yeah, so you've got a little bucket of crickets too.
I do indeed.
Yeah, so,
here they are.
Yeah, so you want to just try it? Like,
yeah.
Have you ever eaten cricket before?
I've never eaten a cricket before. I can't say I've eaten anything like this.
Most people haven't, maybe.
They're a lot larger than I thought.
They're big. They're really no, not even. And you can see the legs and the head and the eyes and everything. Eh? Okay.
It's all there.
So.
First off, it smells quite nutty.
Almost like an earthy quality, eh?
Yeah, they have quite a bit of weight to them. But I guess I should just. Do you think one crunch?
Well, take a little bite, or you can swish it around if you want. Do you want to?
Oh, I think I could see its eyes.
Okay. There you go. How's that?
Really crunchy. Wow.
I know, we can hear it. But does it taste good? Do you feel the protein?
It's flaky.
Yeah?
It really tastes like a peanut.
Oh.
Yeah, very, there's a lot of like flakes and layers.
Oh, there you go.
I think I'm chewing on the legs.
Have you ever had a cricket, Joe?
I have had a cricket, but I want Julie to have her own cooking show now.
So it also, I ordered a guac with
we got to show
crickets
this.
inside.
Yeah, can you see?
And so
I really wanted to see what this looks like.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it would just be so crickety. I thought it would be sort of mushed more.
And how's that?
Well, now I'm getting double the crunch. So.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, it's kind of getting lost in the guac. So I think this is more pleasant.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
For being almost like a surrogate Andrew.
I'm Andrew Chang.
Well, let's not get carried away.
Not all.
And I love crickets.
Okay, so that was kind of interesting. Joe, I didn't realize that. What is it? Something like 2 billion people on this planet eat insects regularly, like already.
Yeah, it's not actually that weird for people on planet Earth. It's a huge source of protein. It requires so little effort to cultivate them, and you can do so much with them. I mean, throw them in a guac, and there you have it. So yeah, it's not surprising, but I think most of the world doesn't realize this.
I was reading that crickets can produce the same amount of protein as a cow, but with only like 0.1% of the greenhouse gas emissions. Like something crazy like that.
That is my favorite stat too. And on top of that, a hugely less amount of water too, when you're comparing beef to cricket. So, I mean, 0.1% of the greenhouse gas emissions for the same protein, that's huge.
Yeah, no kidding. And so like, I'm trying to think about, okay, so what is the scale of the problem and the solution here? And are insects to food like what fusion is to energy? Like,
oh, I like that.
Like in the sense that, maybe not only should we be doing this, but maybe we must be doing this.
Yeah, I like this. I'm going to say maybe, insects to food is batteries to, to fossil fuel, the fossil fuel crisis. So yeah, to put it into perspective, 1/3 of all global greenhouse gas emissions is connected to food. And I mean, it's just such a huge problem because, you start at the agricultural level or, at the methane from cows level, and we are creating greenhouse gas emissions every step of the way in the transportation, the storing, the food waste, all the way to the individual, in their kitchen or in the grocery store making decisions. So the system really needs an overhaul, a huge overhaul. And, I've done a few stories in the past year, and so many experts say that overhaul really starts with the individual needing to think about food in in a completely different way, which, might include crickets.
Right. Well, so does it just include crickets, or is it crickets? Like, are we talking about replacing all meat-based products with insects, or is it like are there many different solutions at play here?
I think this is a many different solutions problem, but at the same time, we're also worried about global food shortages. In the decades to come, that is a crisis that's happening at the same time, and so insects might be a solution to both of these problems, to climate change and to trying to feed the world. And because you can produce them, they contain so much protein, the impact is so small. And I think what's really interesting is what you can do with them. And if you think about it, I mean, we already eat some pretty strange things. You just have to read the back of a bag of chips label, or where your farmed chickens come from. And I think it's just reframing where our food comes from. And maybe you're not literally eating the eyeballs in the future, but maybe it's ground into flour, or that becomes the basis for food in a different way. But like you said, I think it's going to take so many different kinds of solutions. It's going to take farmers in BC growing what used to be grown in California. It's going to take vertical farms in downtown Toronto, and I think insects are a big part of that multi-phase solution.
Now to a development that's been hailed as a milestone for Canada's auto sector. The country's first full-scale electric vehicle production plant is now officially open.
We have very high demand for these vehicles. You're going to see an onslaught of electric vehicles. You'll see continued investment in Canada because we are all in for the future.
Okay, electric vehicles, Joe. So, I mean, set the stakes for me if you can. Like how big is the problem that electric vehicles, are supposed to solve, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So I think the concern is that the transport sector is still one of the fastest growing contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, since the 70s, the transport sector doubled the amount of greenhouse gas emissions. It was adding to the environment. So it's still accelerating, and electric vehicles really are a lucrative, or both a lucrative and an appealing option. A lot of the latest UN studies show that in order to keep global warming below 2 degrees, the only way to do that is to put 300 million electric vehicles on the road. And Andrew, what else is interesting is that only 10% of the world's population is driving enough kilometers to add to 80% of global emissions. So it's really a first world problem, where we need to see those first world electric solutions.
And what is it going to take to tip the scales in that direction? Because, even personally, so I still, drive a traditional, conventional gas-powered car, and most people that I know do as well. So what is it going to take to actually move that needle?
I think it's going to take incentive on many different levels. And it's interesting, talking to you from British Columbia, I'm seeing that tipping point happening over here. We just, used all the personal incentives when my university car beater finally broke down, and we got our first used electric. And now I'm starting to see that trickle effect happen in my own sort of echo chamber. But it's going to take so much more than incentives for individuals. So we are starting to see that. It's really going to take mandates and regulations on a much bigger level. And I think that's why, the recent proposals from the federal government that all, cars sold by the time we hit 2030, or 60% of vehicles sold by 2030 must be electric. Those are the big incentives that I think are going to make the change.
But I mean, we should also keep some perspective here, though, right? Because these aren't like miracle machines. Like all of these electric cars require electricity, and electricity is either a clean or a dirty source of power, depending on where you're getting it from and how you're making it, right?
A brand new coal power station under construction in China's Rust Belt. This is Heilongjiang province, on the edge of Siberia. At a time when the rest of the world is drawing away from coal, the exhaust tower proudly bears the year of its construction. China is apparently digging in.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because this isn't the golden solution yet. You're right. Not only do we have to think about the electricity sources and also what the electricity grids look like to support this new infrastructure that we're going to need, and what that looks like for land use, but it's also batteries. And I think that's a big concern. These ion lithium batteries are a bit of a time bomb right now. They take a lot of energy, and there's a lot of environmental concerns when it comes to mining those raw materials. And then at the end of their life, they're still quite short, so we're worried about electric waste. And so a big part of the solutions that a lot of people are focusing on right now when it comes to innovation is how do you recycle those batteries so that they last for a much, much longer time than they're happening right now. And something that I'm excited about over sort of the next year is this idea that these batteries get a second life supporting solar or wind infrastructure. So it's finding creative ways to keep the battery lasting much longer, because you're right, there is extra waste right now. So far, when you add up all the numbers, comparing fossil fuels cars to electric vehicles, this is still the answer that makes the most sense, but we haven't completely fine-tuned it yet.
Interesting. Okay, Joe, this has been wonderful. Stick around, though. We're going to get a final thought from you after this commercial break. Okay, hey, welcome back to About That. Been having a lovely conversation, as I lose my voice, with Johanna Wagstaffe.
Not the cricket.
Yeah, it's not the cricket. Can't blame that. So, Joe, we've tapped your expertise. I mean, I've tapped your expertise for years now, but in the last, 20 or so minutes. But let me give you the final thought here. I mean, anything as you look forward to 2023 that, I don't know, gives you pause, gives you hope, you name it.
Despite the fact, Andrew, that I cover extreme weather, disasters, the science of climate change, and the tipping points, I am more hopeful now than I've ever been heading into this new year. And I think that's because of the innovations and the individuals and community-based solutions that I'm seeing. And we're coming out of such a big year for global policy. We had these two big COP summits, all of these international policies. But what I'm most excited about are the grassroots movements and the changes that are happening from the ground up. And I'm just excited that, Andrew, more and more people are realizing that there's a different entry point into climate change for everyone, and it might not look the same. For somebody it's crickets, for others it's writing musical lyrics, and for others it's coding, and that makes me really positive.
Awesome. Hey, Joe, this has been an absolute blast, educational as always, and just a heck of a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Always so nice to talk to you, Andrew.
And thanks for watching About That. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.